The sun was low in the sky, casting long, tired shadows across the small, dusty market. This market was not a place for dreams, only survival. Stalls of cracked wood stood in uneven rows, offering small piles of vegetables, faded cloth, and second-hand goods. For the poor widow, this market was her only connection to the world beyond her tiny, crumbling home. Her name was Eileen, though few people remembered it anymore. To most in the town, she was simply the widow, a woman marked by whispers and pity. 2 years ago, her husband had died in a farming accident, leaving her with debt, broken land, and neighbors who treated her as if she were invisible. That afternoon, she wasn't there to buy anything. She had no money to spend. She only came to keep away a growing fear. Her late husband's family would be coming that evening. They had always hated her. They said she had brought bad luck into their son's life. Now they were coming to her home, demanding answers about property, about land they claimed was never hers. She wasn't strong enough to face them alone. As she passed through the market, her hands trembled. Her eyes scanned the faces of strangers, searching for someone kind, someone who looked strong, someone who wouldn't laugh at her desperate request. Most people looked away. Some pretended they didn't see her. Then she saw him. He stood near a stall, pulling on the reins of a tired-looking horse. His clothes were simple, dusty like any wandering worker's. His boots were worn, but not careless. There was something different about him, calm, steady, like a quiet river. His eyes were dark, observant, and strangely gentle. He was actually Caleb Hart, one of the richest ranchers in the territory. But no one here knew that. He had come into town alone, dressed as a common traveler because he was tired of being seen only for his wealth. He wanted a day without bows, fake smiles, and business deals. Eileen stopped in front of him. Her voice was small when she spoke. "Sir, I know this is foolish, but could you pretend to be my husband tonight?" The words tasted like shame. In her mouth, she expected laughter or anger. Instead, he paused. He studied her face, the fear she was trying to hide, the way she clenched her hands, the tiredness in her eyes. He remembered his own empty house, his own silence, a powerful man who owned vast lands but ate every meal alone. "Why?" he asked softly. "My in-laws are coming," she whispered. "They won't listen to a widow. They only respect men. They won't take the house if they think I have someone." A long moment passed. Finally, he nodded. "Just for tonight," he said. Something shifted between them. Not romance, not yet. Just two lonely people standing in a crowded market, making a small, fragile promise as they walked side by side toward her cottage. Neither of them knew what that one small lie would awaken, and somewhere deep inside the rich rancher's guarded heart, something long asleep slowly began to stir. The cottage stood at the edge of the village, small and tired like everything else in Eileen's life. The wooden door hung slightly crooked, and the roof had patches that let in the wind. To Eileen, it was not just a house, it was the last thing her husband had left her. Caleb stepped inside and noticed everything at once: the thin blanket folded neatly on the bed, the cracked teacups, the clean-swept floor. She was poor, but she was not careless. She had dignity, even when life had stripped her of comfort. "You can sit," she said quietly, pointing at the only wooden chair. He nodded. "You don't have to be nervous," he said, though he could see her hands shaking as she poured water into 2 cups. "We'll make this believable." A knock sounded at the door. Her breath stopped. "They're early," she whispered. Caleb stood up slowly, moving closer to her, not touching, just close enough to feel real. "Let me talk first," he murmured. "Just stand beside me." She nodded. When the door opened to men and an older woman stepped inside, her late husband's family, their eyes sharply assessed everything, the room, the furniture, and then him. "And who are you?" the older woman asked sharply. Caleb didn't hesitate. "I'm her husband," he said simply, his voice calm and firm. "We married quietly." Eileen looked down, her heart pounding so loudly she feared they would hear it. They laughed at first, not believing him. They questioned him, his work, his name, how they met. Caleb answered smoothly, not flashy, not arrogant, just steady, protective. "You are a brave woman," he said later, placing himself subtly in front of Eileen, to live alone for so long. "She's not as foolish as you think." There was no anger in his voice, only quiet authority. Something in his certainty unsettled them. When they left, their threats were softer, their steps less confident. Finally, the door closed. Silence filled the tiny room. Eileen pressed her hand to her chest. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know why you helped me." He shrugged, but there was something different now in his eyes, warmth. "I've learned that sometimes people just need someone to stand beside them." They sat in silence for a moment, then softly laughed over how nervous they had been. The tension eased outside. The moon rose. Inside, two strangers began to feel less like strangers. Neither of them said it out loud, but both felt it. The pretending was becoming real in ways they hadn't expected. And the night was far from over. Here is part 3, explained in about 600 words for your story. Part 3, The Quiet Confession. The house felt different after the visitors left. The air wasn't heavy with fear anymore, just quiet. The kind of quiet that only happens when something dangerous has passed, but the body still remembers it. Eileen lit a small oil lamp, the flame flickering softly and painting warm shadows. Along the cracked walls, Caleb removed his coat and placed it carefully over the back of the chair. He suddenly felt aware of how close they were, how small the room was, and how strange it was to be in a home that wasn't his, yet felt more real than any grand house he owned. "You should rest," he said gently. She shook her head. "I don't sleep well after confrontations like that." A faint silence settled between them. Then Caleb did something he hadn't planned. He spoke the truth. Not all of it, but enough. "I don't belong anywhere either," he said, staring at the flickering lamp. "I move from place to place. People are kinder when they don't know who you are." Eileen looked at him, surprised. "You don't look like a man who belongs nowhere." He let out a quiet breath through his nose, almost like a laugh without sound. Looks can be kind. For the first time, she smiled, a small, soft curve of her lips that didn't reach her tired eyes but wanted to. They shared bread and weak tea at the small table. Their knees almost touched. The lamplight softened the sharp edges of their loneliness. "Why did you really agree to help me?" she asked softly. He could have said because it was the right thing to do. He could have said because you needed help. But what he said was quieter. Because you looked like someone who had been strong for too long without help. Her breath caught. No one had seen her that way before. Outside, the wind moved through the dry fields, brushing against the walls. A distant owl called into the night. Eileen wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "It's cold," Caleb said, standing up. He moved to fix the small fire in the hearth. His large hands moved carefully, gently, not like a rich man used to servants, but like a man who was used to doing things himself. She watched him silently, noticing how safe he made the air feel, how different he felt from the men who had judged her, how calm he made her fears. "I lost my husband," she said suddenly, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "He was kind, but weak. He loved me, but couldn't protect our home." Caleb didn't speak. He simply listened. "I don't need someone rich," she went on. "I just don't want to be alone when the world becomes cruel." The fire crackled. Caleb stood very still. Tonight, he wasn't just pretending. Tonight, he felt something dangerous, a wish to stay, but he kept his secret locked in his chest. She didn't know he was a powerful ranch owner. She didn't know he could change her life, and he didn't know how much longer he could keep pretending. Outside, the moon climbed higher. Inside, two wounded hearts sat close, not touching, but no longer far apart. The first light of dawn crept through the thin curtains, soft and pale. Eileen awoke slowly, her body tensed until she remembered she was not alone last night. She sat up, pushing back the worn blanket. The house was quiet. Too quiet for one terrible heartbeat. She wondered if he had left without a word. She stepped out into the small front room and found him there. Caleb stood near the door, tying his coat, ready to leave. Sunlight touched the rough edges of his face, softening the loneliness that usually lived there. He turned when he heard her footsteps. "You should have slept longer," he said. "I thought you were gone," she answered honestly. He didn't reply at first. He wasn't sure why he had stayed through the night. He wasn't sure why the thought of leaving suddenly felt heavier than when he had arrived. "I said I'd help for one night," he reminded her quietly. "I know." She looked down at her hands. "You've already done more than enough." Silence fell between them, full of words they didn't dare say. He walked toward the table, hesitating. The cracked cups were still there from the night before. She hadn't washed them yet, as if washing them would make everything too real. "I can fix your fence," he said suddenly. "Before I go, you don't have to. I want to." And so he worked. The sun climbed higher as he repaired the broken boards, hammered loose nails, and strengthened the weak places. Eileen stood by the doorway, watching him work, watching how careful he was, how steady, how gentle, even with rough tools. She didn't ask where he was going. He didn't ask her to come with him, but both of them felt the unspoken pull when he finished. He wiped his hands on a cloth and stood in front of her. It should hold through the storms. He said, "Thank you," she whispered. They stood, too close for strangers, too far for anything else. "Goodbye, Eileen," he said. It was the first time he had said her name. Her chest tightened. "Goodbye, Caleb." He froze. "You remembered," he said. She nodded. "I remember kindness." He walked to the door, put his hand on the handle, paused for one breath. He almost told her everything. The ranch, the land, the servants, the wealth, but he stopped. Not yet. He stepped out into the morning. Eileen watched from the doorway as he walked down the dusty path, she told herself. It had just been one night. She told herself it meant nothing. She told herself she would forget. But her heart didn't listen. And as Caleb walked away, he realized something terrifying. He wasn't relieved. He felt lost. By evening, silence wrapped around Eileen's cottage like a blanket that was too heavy. She tried to return to her normal routine, sweeping the floor, washing the cups, stitching old cloth. But everything felt different. The chair where Caleb had sat seemed emptier. The air he'd warmed felt colder. Even the lamps burned. Quieter, she told herself. She was foolish. He was just a stranger. He helped me once, that's all. A sharp knock echoed through the small house. Her heart jumped. Painfully, she wasn't expecting anyone. She walked slowly to the door. Her fingers trembled on the handle. When she opened it, it was him. Caleb stood there, breath slightly uneven, as if he had walked back instead of ridden. His hat was in his hands now, like he had no armor anymore. "I thought you left," she said softly. "I did," he answered simply. A wind passed between them. "Then why are you here?" she asked. He looked away for a second, then back at her. "Because I couldn't breathe while walking away." His honesty surprised them both. He stepped inside, not like a guest, not like a stranger, but like someone returning. "I told myself you were just a favor," he continued quietly, "just a kindness." But the road felt empty. Eileen swallowed hard. "You don't owe me anything." "I know," he replied. "That's why I came back." They sat again at the small table, the same cracked wood, the same chipped cups, but the air between them was no longer pretending. She poured him tea without asking. "You didn't have to lie to protect me," she said softly. "You could have walked away." "I've walked away from too many people," he said. "I was tired of doing that." The wind pushed gently on the windows. "I don't have anything to give you," she said, her voice almost breaking. "No money, no comfort, no easy life." He gave a faint smile. "I wasn't looking for comfort." They talked longer this time, about nothing important, chipped roof tiles, broken fences, the stubborn goat that wouldn't stay in its pen. Soft laughter slipped into their voices, surprising them both. The sun faded. The lamp glowed, and, for the first time in years, Eileen felt safe without pretending. Still, she didn't know he was rich. He still wore the disguise of a simple traveler, and she still believed this moment was fragile. At the end of the night, Caleb stood near the door. "May I come back tomorrow?" he asked gently. She hesitated only a second. Yes, and when the door closed behind him, it didn't feel empty. It felt like a promise. Here is part 6 explained in about 600 words for your story. Part 6. The day the walls came down, the village felt quieter, though nothing had changed. Eileen noticed it most when Caleb wasn't there. He came every morning now, not loudly, not with promises. Just quietly, like someone who didn't want to disturb the fragile world she had built from broken things. That morning, he found her struggling with a cracked water bucket. "Let me," he said, gently taking it from her hands. She hesitated, then let him. They walked together to the well. The rope creaked under the weight of the bucket as he pulled it up. The rhythm was familiar, comfortable. "Eileen," he said suddenly, without looking at her, "why don't you ever ask for help?" The question surprised her. She didn't answer right away, because she finally said, when people help, they expect something in return. He looked at her then. "And what do you think I expect?" She searched his eyes. "I don't know," she admitted. He nodded slowly. "Neither do I." They sat under the small shade tree afterward. The bucket of water rested between them. The air felt different that day, heavier, like a storm gathering inside a quiet sky. "There's something you're not telling me," she said softly. He froze just for a breath. "No," he said. "There are things I don't know how to say." That honesty scared her more than a lie. She thought of the way he spoke, the way he fixed things, the way he never treated her like something broken. "You can trust me," she said. He let out a slow breath. "If I tell you," he said, "you might stop looking at me the way you do." "I don't know how I look at you," she replied. But he did. He saw it every time she smiled, every time she waited at the door at sunset. That afternoon, they repaired an old chair together. She held the wood steady while he hammered in small nails. Their hands brushed only for a second, but it felt like a thunderclap in the quiet room. She stepped back, surprised. So did he. The air shifted. "I shouldn't stay too long," he said. "Why?" She asked, too quickly. "Because," he stopped himself. "Because I'm lying to you. Because I'm afraid you'll hate me. Because I'm rich and you think I'm poor. Because I don't want to lose you." None of those words came out. Instead, he said, "Because I'm not as simple as I look." Her heart tightened. "Neither am I," she answered. That night, as he walked away again, Eileen felt the closeness deepen. Not love, not yet. But the walls were cracking, and neither of them was ready for what would come next. Here is part 7, explained in about 600 words for your story. Part 7, The Truth in the Dust. The morning air felt sharp and restless. Eileen stood outside, hanging freshly washed cloth on the thin rope stretched between two broken posts. The sky was wide and uncertain, like her heart had become. Caleb had been coming every day now, fixing things, helping her garden, sitting quietly beside her like he had always belonged there. Still, something in him felt like a locked door. From the far end of the road, dust began to rise. She squinted, shielding her eyes from the sun. A horse moved into view, strong, well kept, nothing like the tired village animals. Then came to more horses. Then a polished riding carriage. Her heart began to beat. Strangely, this didn't belong here. The horses stopped directly in front of her cottage. Men in clean coats stepped down. Their boots shone, their hands steady on leather reins. Then Caleb stepped forward, but not the Caleb she knew. He wore a tailored coat, clean boots, a watch at his waist. No dust, no disguise. He looked taller, stronger, distant. Her fingers tightened around the cloth she was hanging. One of the men spoke, respectfully. "Sir, we've found you." She felt the word hit her chest like a stone. "Sir." Caleb took a slow step toward her. His eyes never left her face. "I was going to tell you," he said quietly. Her voice trembled. "Tell me what?" He stopped just a few feet away. "That I didn't tell you who I was." Silence. "One of the richest ranchers in this region," the man added softly, as if saying a title. She whispered, not finishing the thought. "I never lied about." "Caring?" Caleb said immediately. Tears burned behind her eyes. "So, what was I to you?" she asked. "A game, a story to tell later." His expression tightened. "You were never a game." She stepped back. "Then why not tell me?" "Because," his voice cracked, "just a little. I didn't want you to look at me differently." The words hung heavy. Rich men didn't sit at broken tables. Rich men didn't drink weak tea. Rich men didn't fix fences, unless they were pretending. Eileen felt small. She said. He froze. "If your men have found you," she continued, her voice steadier now, "then your place isn't here." The horses shifted. The men waited. Caleb looked at her one more time. Not as a rich man, not as a traveler, just as a man who didn't want to lose the only place he had felt real. He nodded once, mounting his horse. He rode away without another word. The dust rose again, but this time it blinded her. Days passed. The cottage felt hollow now, as if laughter had been removed from the walls. Eileen moved through her chores like a ghost of herself, folding cloth, sweeping dust, feeding the stubborn goat. Nothing felt real. The truth had changed everything. Outside the village, dust rose again each afternoon, but never for her. She told herself that being alone was safer, that pretending to believe him had been her mistake, that rich men didn't belong in broken cottages. One evening, a neighbor's child came running to her door. "Miss Eileen," the boy said, out of breath, "there's a man outside town. Asking about you?" Her fingers froze mid-stitch. "He has a horse," the boy added, "a hard big one." Her heart twisted. She told herself not to go. She told herself it was foolish, but her feet moved anyway. She walked past the dry fields, past the cracked well, toward the old oak tree near the dirt road, and there he was. Not in fine clothes, not with men, just him, dust on his boots, no coat, no watch. He stepped forward slowly. "I didn't come to ask you to forgive me," he said. "Then why did you come?" She wanted to ask. "I came to stop lying." He took a deep breath. "I am rich," he said simply. "I own land, cattle, and homes I don't live in. But when I sat at your table, I felt more alive than I ever have." The wind moved between them. "I should have told you," he went on. "I was selfish. I wanted to be just a man in your eyes, not a name." Her eyes burned. "You humiliated me," she said, though her voice wasn't strong. "I know," he replied. Silence wrapped around them. "I'm not asking you to trust me again," he said. "I'm only telling you that nothing between us was fake to me." She looked at the horizon. "I can't live in your world," she said. "I don't want you to," he answered. "I just want to live in a world where you exist." The words stayed in the air like a fragile bridge. Eileen felt something inside her shift. Not forgiveness, not yet. But not hate either. "I don't hate you," she said quietly. His shoulders loosened just a little. "That's more than I deserve," he said. They stood there, two broken truths standing between two broken people. He didn't touch her, didn't beg, didn't promise. And when he finally walked away again, it wasn't far. It was just far enough to give her space to breathe. The rain came soft and slow that night. It soaked into the dry earth like apology, like memory, like promise. Eileen sat by the small window, listening to the steady rhythm of it. Her thoughts felt heavier than the clouds. She thought of his words. "I sat at your table. I felt alive." She pressed her fingers to the glass. She didn't trust rich men. She didn't trust promises. She barely trusted hope, but she trusted how she had felt safe, seen, not invisible. The knock on her door didn't come, but a message did. A folded piece of paper slipped through the crack beneath her door. Her heart tightened as she picked it up. Thought the handwriting was steady. "I'm leaving town. If you don't want to see me again, I won't come back. I just didn't want to disappear without giving you the choice." Her breath hitched. The choice, not pressure, not demand, not wealth, choice. She stood in the middle of her quiet home, holding the paper like it weighed more than stone. If she let him go, life would be simple again, lonely again, safe again. If she followed him, nothing would be certain, nothing would be simple, but nothing would be empty. She thought of the way he fixed her fence, the way he listened without pity, the way he treated her like she wasn't broken. The rain grew heavier. Eileen took her shawl and stepped into the storm. Her bare feet touched the mud, but she didn't care. She walked down the road, through the wet darkness, toward the place where wagons usually gathered before leaving town. She saw the outline of horses. Men loading supplies. In him. Caleb stood beside a black horse, ready to mount. He turned and saw her. The world went very quiet. Thunder rolled above them. He stepped forward, slowly, as if he might be imagining her. "You came," he said. "I don't know what I'm doing," she answered honestly. "Neither do I," he replied. She held up the folded paper. "You gave me a choice," she said. "So, I'm choosing silence. I'm choosing to not be invisible anymore." The rain washed the dust from the road. Caleb didn't touch her, didn't pull her closer. He simply asked, "What do you need?" She looked up at him. "Honesty," she said, "not riches, not lies." He nodded. "I can do that," he said softly, and for the first time he believed it. The night finally gave way to dawn, soft and golden over the fields. Eileen stood at the edge of the small cottage, the mud still damp beneath her feet. Her shawl was wrapped tightly around her shoulders, but it did little to protect her from the thrill and fear swirling inside her heart. Caleb was already there, waiting. Not as a stranger, not as a disguised traveler, not as the man she had first asked to pretend he was himself now, fully revealed, yet somehow more real than she could have imagined. His eyes, calm and steady, reflected the sunrise and something else. Hope she took a deep breath, steadying herself against the tremor in her chest. "I'm ready," she said softly. He smiled, just a hint, careful not to overwhelm her. "Ready for what?" "To live," she answered. "Not just survive, not just pretend, to really be seen." He nodded. Slowly, deliberately, he extended his hand. "Then we'll do it together. Honestly, no pretense, no secrets." Her hand trembled as it brushed against his. The warmth of his touch was different this time. Safe, certain, real. She had waited for this. For someone who would not just protect her from the world, but stand beside her as an equal. They walked slowly toward the horizon, leaving behind the shadows of fear, shame, and whispered judgments. With each step, Eileen felt her past losing its grip on her, her late husband's debts, her in-laws' cruelty, the poverty that had defined her existence. Caleb's presence did not erase the struggle she had endured, but it gave her something richer than wealth, someone who saw her fully, and someone she could trust to stand by her. Caleb spoke softly as they walked. "I should have told you sooner. All of it. My name, my life, everything. But I didn't want it to change how you saw me, how you saw yourself. You could never make me feel smaller," she said, her voice firm. "Even when I thought I was alone, you made me feel strong." He stopped and looked at her, eyes full of emotion he had tried to hide. "And you've changed me, Eileen. I thought I understood life, but you taught me that wealth isn't what matters. Presence, courage, and honesty, that's everything." She laughed softly, almost in disbelief, but there was joy in it, a sound she hadn't made in years. The wind carried it across the fields, free and light. Lifting the weight of past sorrow, the sun rose fully, casting golden light over the land. Caleb offered his arm, and she took it without hesitation. They didn't need to speak of riches, secrets, or lies anymore. The pretense had ended, replaced with truth and choice. Together, they walked back toward the cottage, not as a rich man and a poor widow, not as strangers pretending to be husband and wife, but as to people who had chosen to step into the world together, honestly, without fear, and for the first time, Eileen realized she didn't need to ask anyone to pretend. She had found someone who had chosen her freely. And Caleb realized that love was never about wealth or disguise. It was about seeing someone, understanding them, and standing with them through the storms of life. The doors of the cottage opened wide, welcoming not just the sunlight, but the beginning of a life neither of them had expected, a life that was real, shared, and entirely their own. For Eileen and Caleb, the morning was more than dawn. It was a promise kept, a choice honored, and a love born out of courage, honesty, and the quiet strength of two hearts finally finding each other.